In November 2011, Russian police arrived at a small apartment expecting to investigate a case of cemetery vandalism. They thought they were looking for evidence. Maybe photographs. Maybe stolen artifacts. Maybe documents connected to a series of disturbed graves. Nothing could have prepared them for what they were about to find. As officers stepped inside, they noticed dozens of life-sized dolls sitting throughout the apartment. Some were placed on sofas. Some sat in chairs. Others rested quietly against walls. The dolls wore colorful clothing. Scarves. Hats. Stockings. At first, the scene seemed strange but harmless. Then an investigator moved closer. And everything changed. The dolls weren't dolls. They were the preserved remains of real children. The apartment instantly became the center of one of the most disturbing criminal investigations in modern history. And the man responsible wasn't a serial killer. He wasn't a cult leader. He wasn't a black market criminal. He was a respected historian. A scholar admired for his intelligence. A man who had spent decades studying history. His name was Anatoly Moskvin. And his secret would shock the world. To understand how this happened, we need to go back many years before police entered that apartment. Anatoly Moskvin was born in Russia and quickly developed a reputation for being exceptionally intelligent. He was fascinated by history from an early age. While other children played games and sports, Moskvin spent hours reading books and studying historical events. His obsession with learning eventually turned into a career. He became a historian, researcher, and linguist. According to reports, he spoke several languages and published numerous academic works. Colleagues described him as highly knowledgeable. He spent years researching local traditions, folklore, and historical burial practices. His work often focused on cemeteries and gravestones. For Moskvin, cemeteries were more than places of mourning. They were historical archives. Every grave told a story. Every monument preserved a memory. At least, that was how he explained his fascination. To outsiders, he appeared eccentric but harmless. No one suspected the darkness growing beneath the surface. As the years passed, Moskvin became increasingly obsessed with death. Not violence. Not murder. Death itself. He spent countless hours visiting cemeteries throughout Russia. He traveled long distances to document graves and record inscriptions. He photographed burial sites. He researched forgotten histories. Eventually, his interest evolved into something much more troubling. According to investigators, Moskvin developed a deep emotional attachment to deceased children. Reports later suggested he believed many of them had died too young and been forgotten by society. What began as fascination slowly became obsession. And obsession eventually crossed a line. A line that most people would never even consider approaching. During the early 2000s, reports of disturbed graves began appearing throughout parts of Russia. Families discovered damage to burial sites. Cemetery workers noticed signs of digging. Authorities received complaints from multiple locations. At first, investigators believed the incidents might be isolated acts of vandalism. Teenagers sometimes damaged cemeteries. Criminal groups occasionally stole valuable materials. But something felt different about these cases. The pattern continued. Again. And again. And again. The same disturbing signs appeared at different cemeteries. Someone was targeting graves. And investigators had no idea why. Years passed before authorities finally began connecting the incidents. The evidence pointed toward a single individual. Someone with extensive knowledge of cemeteries. Someone familiar with burial records. Someone who knew how to move through graveyards unnoticed. As investigators followed leads, one name kept appearing. Anatoly Moskvin. The respected historian. The cemetery expert. The scholar. The man nobody suspected. When authorities finally obtained permission to search his apartment, they expected answers. But not the answers they found. The moment officers entered, they noticed an overwhelming number of dolls. The figures were everywhere. The apartment looked more like a storage room than a home. Dolls occupied furniture. Dolls lined walls. Dolls filled bedrooms. Everything felt strangely frozen in time. Investigators moved cautiously through the apartment. Then they looked closer. What they discovered would horrify even experienced officers. The figures weren't toys. They weren't mannequins. They weren't artistic sculptures. They were human remains. More than 24 of them. Suddenly the investigation transformed into something far bigger than cemetery vandalism. The discovery stunned Russia. News spread rapidly across television networks and newspapers. People struggled to comprehend what had happened. The photographs shocked audiences worldwide. Many viewers initially assumed the reports were fake. Others believed the images had been digitally altered. The truth was far stranger. For years, Moskvin had allegedly removed remains from graves and transported them back to his apartment. There, he preserved them and dressed them in clothing. He positioned them throughout the home. To visitors, they appeared to be unusual handmade dolls. But hidden beneath the clothing was a horrifying reality. One that remained undiscovered for years. Perhaps the most disturbing question was simple. How? How could nobody notice? The answer remains one of the most unsettling aspects of the case. Moskvin lived a quiet life. He rarely attracted attention. Neighbors described him as intelligent and reserved. He wasn't known for violence. He didn't cause trouble. He wasn't constantly interacting with strangers. Because of this, very few people had reason to closely inspect his private life. The secret remained hidden behind closed doors. And year after year, nobody uncovered it. As investigators examined the apartment, they discovered evidence suggesting Moskvin had developed a highly unusual relationship with the remains. Reports indicated he treated them almost as companions. He gave them names. He dressed them carefully. He arranged them throughout the home. To outsiders, these actions appeared deeply disturbing. To Moskvin, however, reality seemed very different. During questioning, he reportedly offered explanations that shocked investigators. According to multiple reports, he claimed he felt sympathy for the deceased children. He believed they were lonely. He believed they had been forgotten. Rather than seeing himself as a criminal, he viewed himself as someone caring for them. These explanations raised serious concerns regarding his mental health. Psychologists and psychiatrists soon became involved. Experts worked to understand how an educated historian could become involved in such bizarre behavior. Their findings painted a troubling picture. Many specialists concluded that Moskvin suffered from severe psychological disorders. His perception of reality appeared significantly distorted. The case highlighted the complex relationship between mental illness and criminal behavior. It also sparked public debate. Was he a criminal? A patient? Both? The questions were difficult. And the answers were far from simple. Meanwhile, families connected to the disturbed graves faced unimaginable emotional pain. Many had already endured the loss of a child. Now they learned those burial sites had been violated. Communities reacted with shock and anger. For many people, cemeteries represent sacred places. Places of remembrance. Places of peace. The idea that someone had secretly disturbed graves for years was deeply upsetting. The emotional impact spread far beyond the immediate victims. Entire communities struggled to process what had happened. As international media covered the story, Anatoly Moskvin became one of the most infamous figures in modern true crime history. Documentaries explored the case. News programs analyzed the investigation. Psychologists offered theories. Journalists searched for explanations. Yet despite years of coverage, many questions remain unanswered. What exactly was happening inside Moskvin's mind? When did his fascination become obsession? Could anyone have intervened earlier? Could the tragedy have been prevented? No one knows for certain. Eventually, legal proceedings moved forward. However, the outcome surprised many observers. Mental health evaluations determined that Moskvin was not fit for a traditional criminal trial. Experts concluded that psychiatric treatment was necessary. Instead of receiving a conventional prison sentence, he was ordered into psychiatric care. The decision divided public opinion. Some people believed treatment was appropriate given the medical findings. Others felt the disturbing nature of the crimes required harsher punishment. Even today, debates continue whenever the case is discussed.